Hello and welcome back to Slightly Twisted Female. I'm your host, Brittany Rue. Today we are going to dive into the wonderfully horrible world of transhumanism, specifically as it relates to the birthing, gestating, and raising of babies, because there's nothing as fun and exciting as using and objectifying human infants and newborns as some sort of accessory or prop for one's fetish. Specifically breastfeeding from a trans identifying male, and how this branches out into the wider goal of experimental ex-body growing of newborns and neonates and infants and fetuses in things like artificial wombs and womb transplants. This is where we begin to get into medical ethics, deciding, discussing, understanding at what extent does technology begin to infringe on the human rights of humanity as a whole. Is it ethical? Obviously not. Let's get into it. We're going to start with a viral clip on what is it? Bababoo says, is this not child neglect? Of course it is. They don't produce milk. How do we know whatever is produced isn't harmful for the child? And the fact is that we don't know, because there's already so little that we know about one of the most ancient processes, which is female, conception, gestation, and childbirth. There's so little that we understand today still about healthy human infant, maternal infant breastfeeding, latching, lactation. It is unimaginable how little is dedicated in the medical literature to understanding exactly how female bodies work. And so before we even have a full understanding and a full appreciation of how actual female human beings, bodies, breasts work, we, in all of our arrogance, think that we're already at a place where we can springboard into the next new weird medical oddity frontier of allowing paraphilic males with some sort of autogynephilic fetish for the bodily functions of females to breastfeed through a combination of intense drugs. I mean, it happens through drug use. It's a combination of very extreme experimental exogenous hormones being applied while to the male, while the woman, who I guess is nothing more than an incubator, is incubating this baby that this man is, foaming at the mouth to get his hands on so that he can role play a fetish. This unsuspecting child. Let's be clear. Children are not props. They are, not. They are not an object to be used for adults to explore and engage in something that they get some sort of pleasure out of. And again, we know that autogynephilia is a sexual fetish. We understand that males who, especially males who are heterosexually attracted, so they're attracted to women to begin with, right, are not homosexual transsexuals, but they're rather autogynephiles. And we know that there are several subcategories of autogynephiles, and one of those subcategories, slightly more rare, but certainly, prevalent, is autogynephiles who have a physiological fetish, and they get off on so there's some that get off specifically on the transvestism, and of course autogynephiles can have several crossover interests, right? So it's not like you're necessarily only one or the other, but you may have a stronger tendency towards one or the other. So there's like anatomical autogynephiles who those are the ones who want to get the breast implants, right? Who want to get the BBL. They are really turned on by the idea of having certain body parts of women. Then you have autogynephiles who are turned on by the physiology of the female body. So those are the ones who like to role play getting a period. These are the ones who want to engage in lactation fetish, right? So, and again, like I said, there's the transvestism. Those are the ones who are traditionally, referred to as transvestites, the ones who are just wearing women's clothes, who want to wear women's pantyhose or heels. So to be clear, this is handing a child over to somebody who we know has a sexual interest in role playing this, and the child is being used as a prop to fulfill that fantasy. So whether or not this is even safe, which again, we don't even know. We don't know a lot about women's bodies, let alone this sort of science experiment of creating the conditions in which it's possible for male bodies to do it. Men do have nipples, yes. We do have rare instances in literature where men have lactated for a variety of reasons, whether it be a tumor that caused a hormonal imbalance or an influx of prolactin. We also know that men and women all have naturally occurring amounts, the opposite sex hormone, right? So women all have androgens, okay? Men all have estrogens, but they're in, much smaller doses. Yes, we can stimulate them. Yes, we can play with that. Yes, we can induce lactation in men. Is it safe? We have no idea. Is it ethical? Absolutely not. Because again, babies, let's take a look at this, and I'll break this down a little bit further. But this is where we're at, and it's so horrifying to me. It's so horrifying that this is considered okay. And here right now, we're going to take a look at, for the whole people who are still trying to wrap their heads around the why are people enabling this? Why has this taken off as such an interest focal point for things like the medical community? Yeah, it seems, I guess logical and obvious when we're thinking about from a pediatric gender medicine standpoint. We can have lifelong patients, right? But other than just, milking each individual trans-identifying person for, years and years of medical expenses, there's also the innovation potential. It's a new frontier. It's now granting permission for these doctors who otherwise would have been looked at as, trying to get involved in freak science that's unnecessary, unethical. Now they have an ethical leg to stand on, supposedly, that grants them the opportunity to go and run these experiments. Oh, we can come up with artificial wombs. We can induce lactation in men. We can, do all kinds of kooky, crazy things, because never mind that there's a human child involved in all of this. Never mind the greater societal impacts. Never mind how much we still don't understand about the female body. You guys, obstetrics and gynecology, it is barely, 150 years old. These are such new. Before, it was women and midwives who dealt with it. I mean, it was not even 150 years old. It's barely 100 years old. Okay, the turn of the century. Prior to the 1930s, we were birthing at home. Around 1930s is when the birth moved from home to hospital, and it was around the time when Industrial Revolution was really taking off. The amount of Americans were moving off of farms, family farms and homesteads, and they were going to work in factories. We went from the vast majority of Americans working on farms to now working in industrial fields. And there was just this dissolution of, this is when we also saw the shift from the extended family unit to the nuclearization of families. Now we had more material wealth. We were able to afford to live in, different homes and move out and spread around. And now you had a mother and a father living together in a home with children. This was also the beginning of the end of marriage. So, and monogamy and things like that. So, all right, well, let's take a look. Okay, so is it safe? No, we have no idea. We have no idea. And probably not, because another thing that's important to understand is the hormonal orchestra necessary for a woman to lactate is not a static and unchanging thing. Okay? The hormones that are necessary to begin lactation at the beginning of a feed are different from the hormones towards the end of a feed, right? We also know that the milk of a feed is very water heavy. This is so that the neonate. Am I frozen again, guys? Hold on, I can't tell if I'm frozen. Okay, all right, better. Sorry, it seemed like I was frozen. So, we know that the milk at the beginning of a feed is far more water heavy. So this is to quench the thirst of the neonate, of the breastfeeding infant. And then the milk towards the end of a feed is very fat rich. There's a lot of fat and lipid. That's to basically cue the baby that has come to the end of the feed and to satisfy the hunger, right? Our bodies are so intelligent. Our bodies are so complex. Okay, no amount of static hormones is going to supplement or replicate what a female's body can do. Our orchestra of hormones is so intricate, so complex, so changing. It is not static. It's not static from the beginning of labor to the end of labor. It's not static from the beginning of a contraction to the end of the contraction. To assume that we can just give some exogenous hormones that have, basically the similar ratio that we think exists in a woman's body from when we took a blood draw, and think that's going to do it. It shows our arrogance. It is still, once again, illuminating the misogyny in our history of the medical field towards women's bodies, our ignorance. It's like they don't know what they don't know. There's so much there. I've seen it firsthand. I've had doctors, I've had obstetric gynecologists who have done literally hundreds upon hundreds of births ask me questions about normal, unaugmented physiological birth. Me. I've been in the hospital supporting women, and when they learned my background, started asking me questions, because the fact of the matter is these doctors don't see natural childbirth. They just don't. Even from the second you step into a hospital, the second that a mom has to be put on a monitor, it's no longer a natural childbirth. That's still an intervention. That's still something that she wouldn't have otherwise had to encounter. As soon as you have an artificial rupture of the membranes, it's augmented. As soon as you have an IV placed, it's augmented. They don't see normal, physiological, uninterrupted, unimpeded childbirth. There is so much they don't understand about how our bodies work. We literally have to have special volunteers, and we had to sit there and campaign to finally get some IBCLC, some international board certified lactation specialists to come in and be part of the hospital team, because that wasn't a concern for them. They were more than happy to put every infant on artificial feeding, because then the nurses could do it. And it was so much easier to measure than when in breastfeeding. You can't measure how much an infant's getting with breastfeeding. It takes time to work with the mother. Then you actually have to, deal with women's bodies, God forbid, touch women's bodies, and women's bodies coming in all shapes and forms. They don't want anything to do with it. So no, they don't understand. No, they have no idea if this is normal, okay? Because they have nothing to even compare it against, because they don't even understand how women's bodies work. So let's go take a look at this lovely family. It's so gross, you guys. It's so gross. Like, what in the hell? No, is it choppy? Okay, all right. Thanks for letting me know. And it's like these women, it's like, are they just so Stockholm syndromed? I can't imagine being newly postpartum where your body responds to your newborn. Any breastfeeding mother knows if you hear your newborn cry, your breasts start to leak. Our bodies respond to the smell of our newborns. This is ancient. These are ancient processes. It goes against every internal instinct to take your baby who you've literally had in your body since you were a fetus. The cellular life of our children begins in our bodies from the time that we begin to develop in the wombs of our mothers. We've had this child in our body our entire lives. We finally matured it as a follicle. It grew. We gestated. We grew it in our bodies. We shared an organ with it. We shared a blood source with it. We shared food source with it. It could hear our voice. And to birth it, go through that, have our bodies open up and just hand it over and say, yeah, here you go, Jerry. Go for it. Go right ahead. You go and play around and, see what feels right for you. What is going on? Oh, God. Maestrom says, it's worse than disappointing. If we cannot name ourselves, then we don't even exist in law. Exactly. Because anything that refers to women in law, if women does not refer to an adult human female, then we no longer exist in law. You're absolutely right. I missed you guys too. I love you guys. All right. God damn it, Jeremy. Getting real tired of the bullshit. Oh wait, hold on. I'm gonna turn on that. Sorry. Freezing again. All right, here we go. Alrighty.
Creating our family.
Oh, I put it on here.
The baby has been able to latch, but...
Okay, can we roll the voice? The baby has been able to latch. Oh my God, and the woman is on testosterone. Because it doesn't matter if we just flood ourselves with androgens while we're pregnant. You know what I mean, guys? Like, come on. We know that women with polycystic ovarian syndrome have adverse outcomes. Why? Because they have an influx of androgens in their system. You cannot just experiment on the bodies of birthing and breastfeeding women and just assume that it's going to be all good. These are complex processes that they are meddling with. Of course she had a double mastectomy. Of course. Look at her. Does she look happy and fulfilled, or is she just like, what am I even, was this a good idea? Hey Ryan. What's up, guys? What's up? I missed you guys. Holy hell.
I've not been able to produce any milk. It's okay, because we're going to supplement the feeding with formula so that my baby's still getting the nutrients that they need. I appreciate you so much for all your work. And I appreciate you also, baby. I couldn't have done it without you.
Marching in the big hooray. Baby blue, pink, and white represent transgender people, and black and brown represent the queer and trans people of color.
Yeah, we gotta let this rock. Sorry, this is like not relevant, but we're gonna let this rock for a second just so we all can get like worked up.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it.
Does anybody in this room know how to twerk?
Oh.
And then you just move your bum up and down like that. And that's twerking.
Oh, wow. You got me so fucked up. You got me so fucked up. Who was bringing their kids to this? We need like names and numbers because, bro, what? Yo, what? Hey, Black Tiger Paw. Yeah, Black Tiger Paw 1 says it's fine to bring your kids to drag shows. Just ignore the money being thrown around. Yeah, just ignore like the big prosthetic breasts and, you know, the simulating of sex acts on stage. And yeah, you know, all ages show though. Am I right, guys? This what's up. This poor child. This poor child.
Desmond, you're one of
Desmond, it is so, he's so emaciated. He's so being carted around everywhere. He seems so illiterate for his age. I have a son who's around his age who seems like he's so much older and more mature. This poor child is basically reminds me of like when you, like, I feel as sad seeing Desmond is amazing as I do when I see like tigers, you know, like being employed and like elephants at the circus, you know what I mean? And they're like performing these little stupid tricks and you're just like, good God, like this gorgeous, I mean, our children are these beautiful, precious resources. And to see them degraded like this, dressed up in these gaudy, ridiculous outfits, you know, even it's like the little girls who they do the whatever, the beauty pageants and stuff like that. And who is it for? Who is it for? It's always for these old creepy men, and we all pretend like that's not what it is. Oh no, it's their hobby. Oh no, it's they love the art form of it. But come on, no it's not. No it's not. We all know who to pander to. Like, we all know what this is. Poor Desmond. He weighs like 20 pounds. The boy's like 12. Look at him. He's like the size of my 5-year-old. Just lankier.
the youngest and first drag queen / kids. And I've heard that you
Also, like, what like social skills and personality are they trying to engender in this kid? This kid, yes, I must be fabulous at all times, and just like real, like, you know, the like that obnoxious, stereotypical, like just super flamboyant gay that everyone thinks is annoying, you know what I mean? That's like real sassy and like shallow and materialistic, you know, that all like the cool gays don't even like, you know, and like it's like this hyper caricaturization. This kid doesn't know that this isn't like supposed to be reality. You know, he's just like a performance animal. Sad. He's totally malnourished. Look at him, totally.
young adults who look up to you for being who you are.
Look up to
What
you.
are some of the notes you've gotten?
Some of the notes I've gotten are like that you inspire me very much, and I wish I could have
Love
had
bomb.
the support that you have.
Love
I
bombing.
wish that people
What is he
understood that drag is a way of expression.
Performing for a bunch of adults.
It disturbs me that people think that we're, sexualizing them.
Anyway, I can't. I can't watch the abuse of children. I can't. Oh my God. Anyway, so getting back to this lactation thing, you know, whether or not it's, is it possible for a trans-identified male to breastfeed a child? Clearly, yes, right? Hold on, let me switch my mic here. Okay. Is it possible for a trans-identified male to breastfeed? Clearly, yes, right? We see it being done. Is it safe? Now, one thing that people need to understand, okay? A baby recognizes its mother from in utero, okay? We know this through pretty simple experiments, long tested experiments. A baby will gaze at its mother for longer. It'll turn towards its mother's voice. You know, we know that babies can barely see when they're born. They're virtually blind, but they can recognize their mother by their mother's voice and their mother's smell. A baby was literally one symbiotic being with its mother. only moments before. Of course it recognizes its mother. It is jarring for you should never unless it is an absolute medical emergency. Nobody should touch a newborn baby within the first 2 hours of life except the mother. Okay? Maybe the father putting on a loving hand. Nobody, and I'm going to say this to any young women who are pregnant and who are planning to have a baby at any point in the future, do not allow anybody, hospital worker, doctor, anybody otherwise, without an exceptionally valid reason, a life or death valid reason, to take that baby out of your arms. That 2-hour golden window is a critical moment for the baby to get regulated with you. It will regulate its body temperature to you if it has skin to skin. Its heartbeat will synchronize with yours. There are so many things you don't even fully understand. Do not allow them to interfere. Okay? To take that baby off the breast of the mother, to hand it over to a man who, although whether or not he participated in the conception of the baby doesn't know that. All right, guys, let me know if even if I'm frozen, tell me if you guys can still hear the audio. So, and we know that people always say, oh, those 2 hours, it's not a big deal. Early disruption of neonates is not a big deal. And this isn't to make any mom feel bad, okay? A lot of us don't have the support that we need to have truly healthy, physiological, early beginnings with our babies because we just don't see it anymore. We don't know what it looks like anymore. We don't understand how critical these processes are. A baby will latch itself. We see in the hospital all the time moms fumbling around trying to, is this right? How do I get the baby? They're like, all right, well, hold the baby's head like this. You hold the baby's head. You got to put your little finger in there. You got to do the hamburger hold and you put No, you don't have to do any of that, okay? Like, everyone needs to just calm the hell down. The baby's not going to die if it doesn't eat in the first 5 seconds of life. You need to put it skin to skin. It'll do a crawl where it naturally will crawl and make itself up to your breasts. Our babies are beautifully designed as our bodies are. Okay? But if a baby is not heavily medicated, meaning if it wasn't epiduralized and given a ton of drugs in utero, and not saying that there's not a time and a place for things like epidurals, there absolutely is. But when we don't medicate our babies, when they are born free of medication, when the mother is not medicated, these things can happen naturally. We've got to stop interfering with them. We don't know. Well, we do actually know a lot of the problems that it will cause. We also know that breastfeeding is a major protectant against postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. When we rob mothers of the opportunity to breastfeed their babies, we're robbing them of opportunities to be mentally healthy. Okay, babies know that they're not with their mother when you put them on the body of somebody else. So my biggest concern is really about where this sort of cascade of where this is all going to lead, right? And I wanted to take a look at a few other, everyone's talking about these trans-identifying males, using their babies as some sort of sexualized prop to engage in their fetish. It's wrong. The fact that anyone is even cheering this on is bizarre. But what really concerns me is how this is opening up sort of the next frontier of what we're going to be doing to these children. And the login says it's really sad to imagine how misinformed. Hey, Vanessa, I love you. I miss you. It's really sad to imagine how misinformed so many parents are about this process. It's so sad, and the fact of the matter is, it's like, we used to have these unbroken chains of wisdom, of grandmotherly wisdom that was passed upon us. But when we took women out of the birthing process and we handed it over to men, and we took, and I know that this is going to be controversial. And listen, I understand that home birth isn't for everybody, and I'm not here to sit here and argue about home birth versus hospital birth. There is a time and a place for all birth environments, okay? I care about the woman first and foremost, okay? I care about women. I care about babies. I care about the family, okay? I'm not on some hardcore crusade to sit here and say, oh, I had my children at home. I had one of my children in the hospital. I've seen beautiful hospital births. I've seen beautiful home births. I've seen beautiful birth center births, okay? I do know that there's, things that we need to educate ourselves about. But it's just once we've removed the birthing process from the family and taken it so far out of the home, right? So far away from normalized to put even healthy, normal labors and pregnancies, away from the natural home nest. There's just a disconnect in how, these communities of women that used to serve each other for generations and generations and pass on this sort of innate knowledge and wisdom, it's lost. We've lost so much wisdom of our midwife foremothers. There's so much to know, and I've seen this bumbling process for a lot of these obstetricians, and I'm like, it's so clear that you guys have become so over-reliant on a technocratic model that you don't even know how to not over-depend on it, because you've never even seen what a normal birth looks like. Vanessa V said, my cousin breastfed her daughter till she was 3 just because she wanted to. Yeah, we all talked behind her back because we thought it was weird, but we all said, no, but the thing is that's normal. I breastfed all my kids until they were 3. The global average age is around 4 years old. Scientists have basically studied and found that if artificial milks had never been invented and women were, and also if we didn't have, another thing that kind of alters our ability to breastfeed is a lot of women get pregnant shortly thereafter. And that ends, once you get pregnant, the hormones of pregnancy usually end your lactation hormones. Your body makes way for pregnancy. If we didn't have hormonal birth control, or just really any birth control, and if we didn't have artificial milks, the world average weaning age would be around 3 to 4 years old. We know that because that's about the natural child spacing. We know that once a mother weans, her fertility comes back. Breastfeeding causes amenorrhea. Amenorrhea is basically like a cessation, a temporary cessation of fertility or, menstruation, right? So you're no longer ovulating if you're breastfeeding around the clock as a primary nutrition source, right? And so most women would have had babies spaced around 4 years. Incidentally, this is also about the most healthy sibling spacing is between 3 to 4 years. It's healthiest. It has the least impact on the older sibling. They're not being disrupted. It is given the older sibling enough time, and again, I have children that are 12 months apart, so this isn't me preaching about what's best on some high and mighty noble thing. This is just what I know about what we know, about natural normal rhythms, and the further we get from the natural rhythms, every time we add a piece of medical technology, and I as somebody who survived cancer, okay, I think for modern medicine, I really do. I understand how lucky we are. My daughter, who suffered from pneumonia at 11 months old, no way would have survived if it wasn't for modern medicine. No way. Right? So I give thanks for it, but I also have a reverence and an understanding that every time that we add some new medical advancement, there are going to be serious repercussions. We've got to consider there's going to be a major ripple effect. It's important to consider. Let's see. TPS says, my closest friends and I sometimes wet nurse when needed. I was a wet nurse in the Philippines whenever I was still breastfeeding now I didn't have a ton of milk because I was pregnant, but I was still breastfeeding with my older son at that point. He was 2 at the time. Yeah, anytime we had new babies who were being surrendered to the orphanage, I was breastfeeding them. You know, me and another mom who was also lactating, and it's such a gift, you know. So it's like, you know, but again, we were already naturally lactating. All right, so let's take a look at what I think is like, again, this is what's going to start coming next. It's these predatory doctors who are going to start looking, because, you know, they want to make a name for themselves. There's nothing like being able to say, oh, I was the first, you know, XYZ, right? Oh, I'm the first doctor who got a trans woman to breastfeed. Oh, well, we grew the first fetus out of a uterus. Oh. Yeah, so, all right. So now, again, here's world's first artificial womb facility. An artificial womb facility. And we know that there has been like a sheep that was grown, a lamb that had been grown in an artificial womb in a lab. So we know that this is a very viable technology that, you know, I'm sure can and will take off with humans, but shouldn't, right? So, world's first artificial womb facility. And we know that a lot of the AGPs, their favorite thing to like say to women is like, we can't wait till you become obsolete. Women are becoming obsolete. We're not going to need y'all for anything. It's like, oh, that sounds like such a wonderful incel like fantasy. You know, it'll just be a world of men doing everything and not even, you know, being able to bypass having to get along with women for literally anything. Samantha Wang says, funny how they'll give men medication to lactate, but not the new mothers who can't produce milk. No, and it's funny, you know, it's really crazy. And I was saying this when I was going through like my endocrinological stuff. I said the crazy thing is we never cared about women who went into early premature menopause, but now all of a sudden that we have a bunch of 20-something-year-old men who, you know, want to transition to women, suddenly we care so much about developing new technologies for endocrinology and helping, you know what I mean? And it's like, of course, you know what I mean? It just shows and it reveals so much about where our priorities lie. All these things that, you know, we just couldn't deal with and couldn't help women with. Now all of a sudden, when it's men who want to do it, now it becomes fast-tracked. All right, controversial clinic expects to develop 30,000 lab-grown babies yearly. Developer expects technology will be used around world within next 10 to 15 years. Parents would be able to watch growth and development of their child and see through womb while monitoring health via app. Berlin, a biotechnologist in Germany is developing the world's first artificial womb facility. And it lets you choose baby's characteristic from a menu. It lets you choose baby's characteristics from a menu. Ectolife, able to grow 30,000 babies a year, is said to be based on over 50 years of groundbreaking scientific research. Okay, what is so dangerous about this? Again, and it just goes to show the arrogance and the complete lack of understanding of, you know, neonatal maternal health, anatomy, and physiology. A baby who grows in the body of its mother experiences daily hormonal fluctuations that there is virtually no way for us to replicate. Why do I know that there's no way for us to replicate? Because they change and fluctuate minute to minute. We don't even understand how our hormones are orchestrated. Again, they might be able to do a blood draw and they might be able to analyze it and understand the exact, you know, proportions of hormones in that moment. But they don't know how those are working together. They don't know how they ebb and they flow and what those processes are for. They will not be able to recreate that. Why do you think babies like to be swaddled when they're newborns? Because they have been held tightly in a womb. Why do you think babies like to be rocked back and forth? Why do you think that helps them fall asleep? Because when they were in their mother's womb and their mom would go for a walk it would rock them back and forth, back and forth. They're used to that motion. And they would fall asleep. Any woman who's been pregnant probably remembers that as soon as you lay down to go to bed, all of a sudden your baby wants to wake up and start kicking. And you start seeing little feet prints on your belly. Why? Because you're no longer moving, there's no longer that rocking motion, and the baby wakes up. You start walking again, the baby goes back to sleep. That's why it's, taking walks every day as a pregnant woman. Not just that, it's not just the normal fluctuations of hormones that the baby's experiencing in utero or the motion, but also when you have sex. Prenatal sex, first of all, it's so important and healthy to continue having sex if you're comfortable with it and if you're in like a healthy and respectful relationship while you're pregnant. We know that orgasms release a flurry of incredibly important and healthy and happiness promoting hormones, and you're priming your baby's brain with all of these wonderful hormones, endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, that we know have long-term effects on the baby's mental, psychological health and rates of depression, lowering and safeguarding against depression. Having even if you're not in a relationship, then having orgasms, masturbating while you're pregnant, it's so important. Those are things that these babies grown in labs are not going to experience. Another thing that your baby's not going to experience in a lab is, why do you think babies in India and young children in India love curry? Things that would be considered too spicy for babies and children in other parts of the world who aren't frequently exposed to that. Why? If they take the amniotic fluid of an Indian mother who had subsisted on curries and other spicy Indian cuisine, they would realize that the taste is in the amniotic fluid. Babies are tasting the mother's food. That's why when you're pregnant, it's so important to try to eat a wide variety of foods. Mothers who eat the same thing every day are literally, their babies are not getting the same sort of exposure to different foods. Same thing with breastfeeding. When you breastfeed, your breast milk composition changes. This is why, that's one of the benefits of breastfeeding over bottle feeding. Another thing about being in a woman's body and growing in a normal physiological environment is every time your mom gets sick while you're in utero, or even when she's been sick in the last few years, all of those antibodies are going to get passed to you. When a baby has to push through a vaginal canal to be born, you know what happens? All of the flora in the vagina colonizes the body of the baby. This is why babies who are born via cesarean section are born sterile, and they need to be colonized with healthy bacteria because they're much more prone and at risk to infection. When a baby is pushed through a vagina, they get all of the mom's normal flora in the vagina, and it helps colonize the baby so it can protect against bad bacteria, meaning it gets a bunch of good bacteria that it needs all the time. It hears from the moment that it develops hearing. A neonate hears its mother's voice and it begins to bond with its mother's voice. We know that when neonates, newborns, are played recordings of their mother's voice, their cortisol levels lower. The same is not true for when they are exposed to recordings of strangers' voices singing or talking. But as soon as it hears its mother's voice, its heart rate begins to slow to a calmer pace, its breathing begins to settle, its cortisol levels begin to lower. Why? Because it is recognized and heard that voice from the time that it was like 16 weeks old or 20 weeks old. Oh, God. Pearl Moon Red Artist says breast milk composition also varies between mothers as the women's body calibrates it to what the specific baby's needs, and it changes as the baby grows. That's absolutely correct. Okay, a mother's breast milk is different from a 1-day-old baby versus a 1-month-old baby. A mother's breast milk is different if it knows that its body is born early, for a premature baby, for a sick baby. We get tons of antibodies through our breast milk. But this doesn't just start and stop with breast milk. It begins from the time that our babies are growing in us. Our babies actually start to have relationships with their other family members. When we're sitting and we're pregnant and we're having conversations with our family, that baby is already being exposed to the rhythm and the rhythms and the patterns of its home life, the family life that will welcome it. By the time it comes home, it's already had exposures to those voices. What do you think? So for 9 months now, or at least 5 months from the time it developed hearing, that baby has been... Who do you think benefits from those endorphins? Yes, the baby. You know what else babies experience? They experience a circadian rhythm. Babies can tell when it's light outside. When you go outside, it sees the sunlight. Our bellies are translucent. It lets some light in. Babies can see when it's daytime. They know that there are patterns of life happening around them. They will be missing out on all of that. We don't know how this will impact us as a society. We don't know how this will impact children as intelligent, sentient beings. These are processes that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years. You cannot go and meddle in things just you barely understand and think that it's okay to just cut out an entire crucial piece of that and think that it's going to be all good. We've learned this. We learned this with the scopolamine era. We learned this when we had goddamn 60% cesarean section rates. When we had the forceps crisis that was leading to cerebral palsy cases in children that didn't need to have cerebral palsy. Because we were yanking them out like they were goddamn salad with salad tongs and damaging their spines. When we were poisoning them with Chinese artificial milks. Thousands, hundreds of thousands. One of the earliest developments is the sexual dimorphism of our species. I mean, that happened before our prefrontal cortex developed. These are ancient processes that we still barely understand. You cannot meddle with them and think that it's going to be all good. All right. Let's see what else this says. All right. My daughter has gymnastics. I just realized. Super late. I love you guys. Let's finish this. If anybody wants to I was trying to look for some breastfeeding videos and stuff like that. If anybody has any videos that they want to send me that we might want to look at in a live stream, I can't guarantee you that we'll go over them in a live stream, but you guys sending me leads on stuff is always super helpful. So just remember, my email address is aslightlytwistedfemale@gmail.com. Anybody who wants to support the channel, I have been demonetized, so if you still want to support the channel, my Cash App is $aslightlytwistedxx. And I do actually still have PayPal. I know. I said we should all get rid of it because of what they did, but it's I've been left with so few options. So it's aslightlytwistedfemale@gmail.com. I'm so sorry. And then let's see. Still working on some stuff. Oh, I have some announcements about the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility protest that's going to be coming up in April. Stay tuned for that. Anybody who is in the sort of northeast, New Jersey area, North Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, even DC, if you guys can make it, we would love to have you. I'm going to go over that some more. Thank you, Husky Dare. Thank you for being here with me. Carissa Hall says, it would just be cruel to try to bring a baby into the world outside of a natural mother's womb. I don't understand how the medical community would even consider something like this, because a lot of them are sociopaths. That's why, Carissa. Unfortunately, and again, my ex-boyfriend is an anesthesiologist. He's a physician, and trust me, like, he's a POS. Like, he was brilliant, such a brilliant, like, breathtakingly brilliant human being, but he's not a great guy. And it's like, you realize that, like, a lot of these people really are sociopaths, and they're so driven to succeed, and that's why they're successful, because, you know, they'll do what they have to do to get ahead, and it's not always a good thing. It's not always, you know, rooted in kindness and compassion and ethics. You know, there's a bottom line involved, and yeah, and like I said, now this gives them an ethical land, like, to stand on. It just becomes a cascade where now we have now reasons why we need to do all this stuff. Before I was like, oh, what is this, just for rich people? Now I say, oh no, it's for trans people. This is why. This is the why. Anybody who's confused about the why of why we're doing any of this crap, this is it right here. Oh, Lord. Sweet sea monster. Hello, my dear. Thank you for coming. Unfortunately, I got to get going soon. Biblio Wolf says tech should be reserved for high-risk pregnancies or cases where mom or fetus has a pre-existing condition. Exactly. You know, we need to mitigate, you know, science and technology or achieving, you know, the impossible. Science and technology is about trying to to put things back on a normal track. Right? It's about trying to reestablish the natural equilibrium, not changing what that equilibrium even is. I can't tell if I am still frozen. Damn it. Looks like I am. Yeah, I don't know if I was frozen. I said, I'll just leave you guys with this. Just like in the vein of what Biblio Wolf is saying, science should not be about changing the equilibrium of nature and, you know, natural law. It should be about helping that natural equilibrium get back on track, right? It should not be about redirecting it or playing God or create, you know, trying to do the impossible. It should just be about restoring health in its natural order. You know, we've got to know our limitations. We must respect things. We are not God. We should not be trying to play it. I love you guys. Judy C says the babies will be made in labs and Elon's brain chip will be implanted directly after birth. Oh yeah, there's some once they're in labs, it's like they'll really belong to the government at that point. What if a parent decides not to come and pick them up? Do they belong to the lab? Is it now just going to be? Can we just make babies whenever we want them? There are so many ethical considerations. You know, we've already gotten children further and further away from the care and keeping of their own families. Now governments, you know, brainwashing centers like public schools, which already have such a huge grasp. Now they're in their homes with things like TikTok. I mean, it's just one step away from totally dismantling the family so that the family no longer has autonomy over, you know, our